The sun can actually satisfy up to 70% of your caloric needs.
Light is feeding us, or we're being starved from it.
The average American gets like 5-7 minutes of sunlight a day now, like just going out to the car, basically, going to work. And we know that we're beings of light. We're supposed to get this big dose of near-infrared light from the sun every day. We're really deprived of the things that keep us really resilient and also allow us to be really high frequency and really multidimensional.
It's almost impossible to do the deeper emotional and mental healing work that's necessary if the body is blocking it so severely.
You definitely want to prime your experience by having the cleanest vessel possible. What I'm doing in SaunaSpace is a recreation of basically our experience with the sun, but I call it the firelight spectrum. So it's the sun without ultraviolet light and blue light, the extremely high frequency, high energy, damaging wavelengths.
It's the closest thing we can get to a fire without actually lighting a flame.
Because of the light and the heat and the peace that is in there, you begin to remember, wow, I'm healthy. And your mind starts to heal and you become more clear. The light just reminds us that we actually create our own light. We're much more electromagnetic and quantum than we are like chemical or even biological. The knowledge we had of ourselves and of energy work and of internal alchemy is something so profound that we're just beginning to kind of circle back and remember now.
Hey, it's Josh. Before we get into this episode, I have a small yet powerful favor to ask of you. The community has been growing by thousands lately, and the bigger the tribe, the bigger names of world-class guests we can have on this podcast that I can bring to you from my heart, from my curiosity, so you can have more wellness and wisdom in your life. Would you please be so kind as to hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast? It'll allow us to rise naturally in the algorithms based on your 2-second act of generosity by you just tapping that little subscribe button wherever you're viewing or hearing this episode. Thank you so much. It means the world to me and our entire team here at Wellness and Wisdom. Now enjoy the podcast. Brian, welcome to the studio. Welcome
Thank
back.
you for having me,
Welcome
Josh.
back to Austin,
Wow.
man.
So glad to be here and be your first guest. This place is just boss. It's so beautiful.
We've teleported from our last pod and you just got back from Egypt. How was that?
It was amazing, man. It was so enlightening. You know, I had been to Egypt 20 years ago as when I was a student. I was studying in Israel, and so I popped over to Egypt. But it was very tourist-based, the trip, you know, and I was just in Cairo, and I didn't have a lot of money and time, and I was on my own. It was just me and a friend. And so this was quite different. Stephen Young, he's based here or close by in Austin.
Yeah, we've texted. I get to follow up with him.
Yeah, he's a really interesting dude. He's a student and I would say master also of Hermetic law and sort of alchemy. So he calls himself an alchemist. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you can start out with the Kybalion and learn about sort of some of the basics of Hermetic law. So yeah, he set up the trip. It was called Atlantis Rising, and I was really intrigued by that name. And it ended up being 17 of us who went on this amazing odyssey that started in Italy, and eventually we went down to Egypt. So in Italy, we went to this place called Damanhur, and Damanhur is a community in northern Italy, west of Milan, kind of east of Turin, that they kind of have a spiritual community there, a spiritual retreat. So that's its own story. It's basically founded by this guy Falco, who he and his people created this community where they created these temples that they dug into the mountain over 20 years illegally, secretly, and made this beautiful like series of meditation temples that are dedicated to humankind and all of the spiritual traditions on earth. It's really beautiful what they've done there. And so that's its own story, you know, that's really fascinating. Basically, they got found out at one point, and the army, the Italian army commander came ready to destroy this because this was all illegal, right? It was all built illegally, like under
Definitely
the ground.
not Catholic.
Yeah. It was all like, this was like not cool what was going on you know, from the perspective of the Italian government. But as the story goes, he gets there and demands to enter, and Falco says, okay, it's time to reveal what we have to the world. And the Italian commander goes in and is so astounded by the beauty of this and in awe of what they created that he said, "No, we're keeping this. This stays, and they can have it." And so that's the story. And so then this community opened up to the public, and you can go there now and study. And they have meditation classes, and they have dream school classes, and different like sort of esoteric study courses that they offer. And they have an actual community where they all live together according to really beautiful principles. Actually, they're very focused on consciousness work. So anyway, we start there, and we did a lot of meditation in the temples and activation. And we actually, some of us got to stay in what they call the abaton, which is the top of the temple. They have rooms there where you can sleep. So each night we're sleeping literally in this temple with all this amazing energy, right? And we did a lot of meditation there and study of Atlantis. So another interesting thing about the Damanhurians is they're Atlantis experts. They have this huge repository of Atlantean knowledge. And so we were there, we did all this activation and meditation and study and sort of preparation for our trip to Egypt, which is linked to Atlantis in a big way. And we also took with us a Damanhurian Egyptologist, this Italian guy named Crotolo, and also a sort of a historian, a Greek historian, and sort of just like really smart woman who's like really well studied. Her name is Hesperide. So and she's also Damanhurian, so she's part of the community. So the two of them accompanied us to Egypt, and we went on this totally crazy odyssey for like 10 days in Egypt, northern Egypt and southern Egypt, starting in Cairo, ending in the Luxor area. But the whole time we had this really unique experience. First of all, the travel group we used in Egypt was called Soul of Egypt. And they were just like so amazing. It was all about like spiritual tours of Egypt. It was really deep. We had all this private access that I don't think most people actually ever get, because Crotolo has been to Egypt like 30 times. He knows all the guards at all the places. He knows all the people, right? And so, for example, we were in the Great Pyramid for 2 hours all by ourselves. We were in the King's Chamber all by ourselves, like no guard, nothing, just the group for like half an hour.
What'd you feel in there? Did you feel the ancientness?
Yeah.
Did you feel the presence of deity?
So that's what we were trying. That was one of our intentions the whole time, was to just be and feel and sense like the memories that are there, because there's memories in stone. You know, water holds memory, crystals hold memory, and that's what a CD, that's what a DVD is, right? Same thing with stone. So same thing with the pyramids and everything. There's so much knowledge there. That's really kind of like a key for us to unlock our own knowledge. You know, we don't really ever learn anything, Josh. All we do is remember constantly, right? So when we go there and you actually touch the stones, there's a process of, it's a connection and a remembrance that connects us to our shared past. And our shared past is one aspect of our shared past is Atlantis. It's this antediluvian civilization. And for those of you who want to kind of learn a little bit about Atlantis, there's this amazing book called Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. It was written by this senator named Mr. Donnelly, American senator in the late 1800s. Fascinating read about this civilization, dude, that's antediluvian, that it's before the flood. It was on a continent called Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean. The highest mountains of it are the Azores Islands now. This thing is totally sunk. There's radar exploration that shows the outline and the features of the continent. It kind of went all the way up to Spain, and then over and down and almost pretty close to kind of like where the Amazon dumps into the Atlantic in South America. And this is a civilization that everything that we have nowadays, all of our mythology, religion, all of our major technology, our etymology, all of our language, our cultures, our habits, our races, our racial diversity that we have. There's a strong argument that it all emanates from this one culture, the seafaring culture that evolved over tens of thousands of years, like bronze tools, the compass, fire, the steel itself, and iron. And then, like, for example, Olympus is Atlantis. You can see like there's a lot of etymological connections, not just on the east side of the Atlantic, but the west side. If you look at Greek culture and Egyptian culture, they're gods, and Olympus and stuff was in the west. All the gods were in the west. And if you look at like the Toltecs and the Aztecs and the Mayans, they talk about how their gods came from the east and originate in the east. And so that's Atlantis in between. And the Atlantean, from an anthropological perspective, the Atlantean Empire, once they began to expand, went all the way to China, past like the Indus Valley, all the way into China. It went all the way west into South America to the Incas, to like Peru. And it went north all the way up like to Oregon, all the way up to the West Coast, all the way up the Mississippi. There's these earth mound peoples. There's these there's pyramids in America. Maybe not everybody's aware of this, but there are some pyramids in America too. And of course in South America, they're all over the world. And the pyramids are this, sort of reconstruction of the main mountain in Atlantis that was like outside of the capital city of Atlan. And the symbol of the earth, if you look at alchemy symbols and like zodiac symbols, is a circle with a cross in it. And the cross is the four rivers of Atlantis that like originate around this mountain that was in the middle of Atlantis. So there's so much of our symbology and everything that as you continue to look into it, we could talk for like ever on this. It all comes back to that. So back to Egypt. Egypt appears to have been the greatest colony of Atlantis, one of the oldest and the most developed. And so when we want to understand ourselves, and find who we are, and that's like perhaps our greatest purpose, right, on earth is to connect heaven with earth. And it's not just an external exercise. More than anything, it's an internal exercise. We need to remember who we are as individuals and as a race, as a human race, and also as like beings of light, as star beings, like literally we're beings of light. We're also star beings. We're beings of the stars. Like we're connected to this greater reality that's beyond just the 3D. It's beyond just Earth. And there's a big part of that is like remembering all that step by step sort of to get to that. So Atlantis, for people who are interested in not just reading about it in a book like I've recommended, but actually like feeling it and remembering deep inside in your heart, Egypt is like probably the best place to go. So Egypt was this amazing continent or this amazing colony of Atlantis. And it's so interesting because compared to almost everywhere else on Earth, they have the best like architectural evidence of Atlantis, like the pyramids. The pyramids are not Egyptian. The Egyptians moved into them and used them.
Interesting.
The pyramids predate.
So you don't think the Egyptians built them?
Oh no, not all of them. Definitely, they expanded some of them, and they were they did some building there. Like Ramses II was the greatest builder, the greatest pharaoh builder of Egypt. He built so many statues everywhere, but all the major stuff like the Great Pyramids, the Sphinx, and some of the great huge works were already there. Like just from a geological perspective, there's vertical erosion evidence on the Sphinx and around the Sphinx that's like 20,000 years old or more. So that's before the old empires, the oldest empires of Egypt. And even the first, I don't remember his name, but the first pharaoh of Egypt, like somehow suddenly was born into this fully baked civilization with like art, culture, advanced understanding of astronomy, architecture, like aqueducts and like all this rich science that like, where did it come from? You know, it was not already, it was inherited. It was inherited from the Atlanteans.
Well, I mean, all wisdom is inherited. Like you said earlier, we don't actually learn anything new. We just remember. Because when I hear you speak, I see pictures, and that's how I understand. I'm actually in the triangles, in the structures, feeling the rocks, feeling the energy in there with you. And I haven't been there, but I'm getting the remembrance from you.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And that's the craziest part. We remember by not just being there, but by story. Mm-hmm. So when you're telling this story, somebody's like, I'm going to go to Egypt, right? But you don't actually have to go there. There's ways to get this knowledge, this expanded consciousness besides going there.
Yeah, I mean, everything comes down to light, sound, and symbols. And, you know, we use human language to translate some of this, but when you're hearing the words I say, it's going into your mind, and then there's these images and these visuals and these thoughts that are provoked, and then it's like, from a cellular perspective, there's activation that's going on. You know, we have all this DNA in our body, and none of it's junk. You know, it's called junk because you know, a modern science thinks it's not used, but what it is a massive data repository. It's a massive blueprint that is waiting to be activated. So anyway, Egypt. So it's so fascinating, dude. So the Great Pyramid, for example, those of you who have seen the Great Pyramid and the Khafra and the Khufu pyramid, so the second biggest pyramid right next to the biggest one, they have these, they were all originally covered with a limestone cap, a casing that made it all smooth on top of the big limestone blocks that are like the foundation pieces. And most of that's all eroded off, but at the top there's this little bit left of the casing, of the limestone casing. And there's salt water erosion evidence on the Great Pyramid that indicates a flood of salt water that was there for like decades, not just like for a night, and then slowly receded over time. That's very strong evidence for some kind of massive increase in sea level, a flood of sorts. And so if that's the case, then those are pre-flood and they're antediluvian. So there's like evidence like that all around. There's also around the Sphinx, there's like granite walls, this pink granite that's like really hard stone. And it's some of the pieces are cut in these really intricate, weird ways with these weird notches. Like there's like 12 or 13 different cuts. It's not a rectangular block. It's this weirdly cut block that's like, it doesn't make sense. Why would they cut it that way? It's not the most efficient way to cut it, unless they cut it that way because they were like proud and demonstrating their advanced like technology and grasp of stonework. And so you see that and you see the other stuff, and it's clearly there was some kind of light or probably sound technology that was used to shape the stone. And we're modern physics and science is just getting into some of that, where you can use sound to levitate stone. You can use sound frequencies and other electromagnetic frequencies to sort of begin to manipulate the density and the nature of stone itself. So there's like something there that they had that we still don't understand. You know, nobody understands how it was built.
So the big question is, how are you going to bring this into the photon and into the glow and
okay, well, we're going to get to
your
that.
company, right?
So
because I'm like practically, I'm there with you right now, and I know everybody is, but I'm just feeling, okay, what do we do with all this information? Because the hieroglyphics are information, right? Maybe the oldest information on the planet. But how do we practically make that usable in our modernity world? I think that's the big question.
Yeah. So I think first it's understanding the context. So basically the pyramids are antennas. They're energy collectors. The Nile used to flood all the way to the pyramids. There's these massive arrays of underground waterways that all create, because water can carry current, right? It can carry energy.
It's also the hard drives of the future.
Yeah,
water.
For sure. There's so they understood this. They were using this. They had these massive water systems, and the pyramids themselves had electrum caps. So that's a half gold, half silver alloy that is naturally occurring, but you can also make it. And electrum was one of the most prized metals in Atlantis. Like gold and silver itself. Like, why do we prize gold and silver nowadays? Gold it's really soft. Like silver, like why is it so valuable? an argument that it was because it was valuable for spiritual and energetic work in Atlantis. Like this gold is the sun and
Makes sense.
and silver is the moon. So we inherit that as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, the pyramids are energy collectors and basically focusing tools and antennas. And they're connecting out and up to the stars. And the sarcophagi inside are not sarcophagi. They're not burial coffins. They're portal chambers. They're for either astral travel or meditation or like internal like spiritual transformation. Like the shroud, Jesus' shroud, the holy shroud. It's in Turin, which actually I was just at and on another trip. That was an ancient initiation practice where you went into the sarcophagus and you were wrapped in a linen shroud and you stayed there and you had an awakening and an activation, and that's where you ascended into like from an apprentice into like a master. It was like a rite of passage kind of thing. And so there's many shrouds, by the way. There's not just the one holy shroud in Turin.
This is so trippy to me because literally, if we're just remembering who we are on a cellular level, then what is the wisdom that you pulled back? Because we could do an entire podcast on Atlantean theory and on the pyramids, but you had to have pulled something back practically that allowed you to be in relationship, to know yourself better, and quite frankly, to use light and to use infrared light to help people heal. There's got to be some bridge there between what you pulled and what you have here in modernity in this world. Because that's a whole nother world, dude.
Yeah, it's a whole nother world. So Jace, basically it's really powerful reminder and evidence, just talking about it forever, but for people who can visit there too, go ahead and check it out.
I mean, I would love to go.
That the human race is much more ancient than we think. And our knowledge of light and sound and symbols is way older than the classical archaeological narrative and what we had in Egypt. That's and sort of the knowledge we had of ourselves and of energy work and of internal alchemy is something so profound that we're just beginning to kind of circle back and remember now. And so what we're doing with what I'm doing in SaunaSpace is a recreation of basically our experience with the sun, but I call it the firelight spectrum. So it's the sun without ultraviolet light and blue light, the extremely high frequency, high energy, damaging wavelengths. But the rest of it is, it's a reminder. The light just reminds us that we actually create our own light, and DNA creates its own light, and the mitochondria communicates to the nucleus with near infrared wavelengths. Like we're much more, and we talked about this in the previous podcast a lot, we're much more electromagnetic and quantum than we are like chemical or even biological. But we sit in this biological form. So all of this kind of led to, for me anyway, it was a real kind of just a spiritual upgrade, a spiritual activation, and a remembering of how powerful we are, how much power we have inside. Like we're multi-dimensional beings and we're connected with the stars. And that's one last thing that I would add to the Egypt trip and the trippiness of Egypt is that some of the technology that you see that was used to create some of the Egyptian architecture and that was used in a quotidian manner, like day to day by everybody in Atlantis, was given to them and us by the people from the stars. Like we're not alone.
Who do you think the people from the stars are?
Well, there's that's like probably a whole different conversation, but I think that, we're here in the 3D in three dimensions, and there are other higher dimensions of consciousness that we exist in simultaneously. So whether you call it angels or demons or gods, or you just call it a higher dimensional, more complex aspect of yourself, it's all the same. Like there's a whole reality that's out there that we're a part of, that we're not alone. The sort of like there's a narrative that we're, it's just us here and there's no other and sentient beings, and like the flat earthers are like, we're here, we're isolated in this bubble, and there's nothing else. And what I experienced was actually quite the opposite, that we're connected to this cosmic reality and this cosmic opera that's like really exciting. And humans are not just a small part of it, we're a big part of it. We're a part of a grand experiment of free will, where, originally there was just the all, God, that in undimensionalized, like this undimensionalized identity. And then there was this sort of fractal separation that began to occur to create dimensionalized space and time and space and like existence and reality beyond this like sort of like super high level, like absolute reality. And that's where we're in. And there's definitely, I don't know if I want to call it a battle or a spiritual war. There's definitely a sort of an opera going on, sort of a theater going on of like, it's not really light versus dark though. And it's not good versus evil. It's organic versus like artificial matrix. There's because we have free will, not just we as humans, but like beings, dimensionalized beings, sentient beings. There's some who have chosen to take the path and sort of the goal of separation and domination. And so we're just in this grand cosmic experiment. Like, can we handle free will? And can we use free will to expand our consciousness and align ourselves with God and with the divine and with the absolute, or do we devolve, and become like totally whack and separatist?
That is exactly how I've explained it. We're in a grand theater. This thing's playing out. Dark cannot live without light, vice versa. That's why there's the yin yang. I mean, if you don't experience dark in this world, there's no way you can feel the light. Mm-hmm. And some people, because of this concept of free will, they go to the dark. It's kind of like in Star Wars. You're Darth Vader or you're Luke Skywalker. And we see this over and over and over again with Joseph Campbell and his mythology, which he probably pulled, by the way, from the pyramids and the Atlantean theory and whatnot. Because for me, this is so interesting. It's so fascinating. And I'm always in my world trying to take things from ancient masters and even contemporary masters and make them usable, because I'm all about utility. At least that's my role in the theater. I'm all about utility.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some practical utility for this. Earlier, you mentioned that we're remembering who we are, and light is actually something that DNA creates. So DNA creates light. And if people haven't listened to the other show, we'll link it in the show notes here. Go into that a little bit, because the body is literally and figuratively emitting light. And so when we bring light to the body, you're actually nourishing potentially spaces that could have been dark because of bad thoughts or because of bad habits, or let's just say not even good or bad, just things that are not conducive to health, things that pull people out of homeostasis. Right?
So weird conditioning that we get where we've assumed an identity and a personality and habits and thoughts and opinions that are not really our own. They're things that we learn from our parents primarily and our loved ones as we grew up. That's the nature of being a child and learning. And you learn everything around you. You're a total sponge. And most of us, I'd say, the irony is that we're taking on a lot of identity that is not truly ours. And so that's part of healing as we become adults and finding ourselves again is wow, is that opinion that I have and that feeling I have, is that really mine? Is that from my soul and like deep within? Or is that something that I was programmed to think and programmed to feel? And I think for so many things, it's the latter. So at the same time, because we are connected to the divine, we have this divine part of ourselves, and it's the vehicle and the access and the portal to that is inside. It's actually within. And I don't just mean within like metaphorically. I mean actually physically, it's within our biological body, our instrument. It's here. It's really in our DNA more than anything else. It's this access to the infinite, to the absolute, where all knowledge is already there for us. So we can go inside and we can find that. We can find answers to anything. And as we clean up our body, we use sauna, get the toxins out and the poisons that are causing dissonance and blockage, and then use light and sound and symbols to activate this dormant subconscious data that we have. We find that everything we want to know, it's already there. It's already within. We just need to remember it. But it is really helpful to have some practical tools, right, to do that.
Exactly.
So light, the light of nature is the sun. It's incandescent light. It's light that comes in this distribution of different wavelengths that we were biologically programmed to love and enjoy. And so what I've done is I've said, let's try to use light as natural as possible and keep it incandescent so that there's just like the sun, there's a little bit of red, a lot of near infrared, which seems to be probably the most magical part of the sun's spectrum. But there's also mid infrared and far infrared. So our bulbs, there's kind of this misnomer that maybe we didn't discuss much in our last podcast, that people are like, there's this really silly argument, near infrared, far infrared, like which one's better for saunas, especially in the sauna world. It's so crazy how it's gotten. And the fact of the matter is our bulbs also emit far infrared. It's like 15 or 20% of it. So there's a component of that, because just like the sun, there's a component of far infrared. It's just that with our bulbs, just like the sun, there's more near infrared. But it's not like we don't have far infrared, or we in the electric light bath side of sauna and light therapy, we don't have far infrared. We have that as well. It's just in a natural proportion that matches the light of nature. So, and that's in contrast to what I would call the matrix light, the artificial light.
And this is where you talked about earlier, people choosing the AI artificial or the divine God spark.
And that's the beauty of free will is you get to choose. You can plug into the matrix, and we need to have, or I should say we ought to have a compassion for those people. That's their soul contract. They've chosen in this lifetime to plug in, play Fortnite, not worry about things. And that's okay. We're not judging them. There's no need to judge anyone at all for anything. I, though, choose to be more aware, to be more aligned with as much as I can be with the divine side of myself. And with that comes responsibility. You have the awareness and the responsibility to act. The more you know what is true and good and real, the more responsibility, the more impetus you have to do that. So it's kind of strange, actually. You have free will, but the higher your level of awareness is, it's sort of like the less options you actually have to choose. That actually are the true good and real options that are aligned with the divine.
It's like once you taste that, and you tasted it out there in Egypt, and I've tasted it in breath work and in many plant ceremonies, and also just being in committed relationship. I'm sure you feel this with Mila, right? The right mirror will come along and it'll activate these parts of you that allow you to never go back to what you knew before. In other words, like whether it's any kind of addiction or any kind of habit that kills your physical body or deadens your mental space. Once you know, you can't go back. You can't go back to what was before, because now there's this awareness and consciousness that's literally gravitationally pulling you forward.
Oh yeah,
it's impossible to go back once you know.
You totally. It is absolutely an attraction. So you become attracted to high frequency practices and things like that. And the more you increase your frequency and expand your consciousness, it's everything that's low frequency and is not aligned with that becomes more and more starkly clear and in opposition to what you want to do. And you just look at those things, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm absolutely not doing that anymore. And then you look at other people and you have to check yourself and have compassion. Because you can look at other people. Why are they playing Fortnite so much? Why are they eating like that?
Yeah.
And it's because they're plugged in.
we'll go right back to the DNA and the light connection. But what inside of you, or what along your journey has allowed you to, when you see someone that's hurting themselves or other people, and you know because of the stage of consciousness that you're at, what makes you choose compassion over judgment in that moment?
Oof. Well, this is a lot of a lot of ancient teachings here. I think people can just start out with the 4 agreements. If you want to really keep it simple,
That's great.
It's wasted energy. There's no value or benefit that comes from judgment, and what the judgment is it's attachment. You're attaching importance to their actions as it relates to you and your reality. And you're looking at them and, Johnny, you shouldn't be doing that, and like sometimes I look at my family members and, I still sometimes have this tendency for sure. But then I'm like, my judgment doesn't help them at all, but my compassion can. It can provide a vehicle for them to feel and experience, hey, there might be something else out there. And so I have a lot of compassion. I may make some jokes about it or laugh about it, but mostly I live in my own reality where I don't do that. And I stand as like a quiet example of a different choice that they can make, maybe.
Yeah. There's more than just the 4 agreements. I think it's a lifelong journey of that.
Yeah. I just threw that out to start.
I remember Ram Dass got back from like 20 years or something of training in the Himalayas, and he was meeting with ascended masters, and his dad picked him up from the airport. And he was like triggered by his dad, and he had done all this deep spiritual work. And so I think he wrote in his book, Be Here Now, he said, if you really want to know if you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family.
Yeah,
that's how you know if you've done the work or not.
Yeah, I actually,
no greater proving ground than
so funny,
being with your family.
I just got back from a family reunion. We took everybody to Branson, Missouri, which is like, it's kind of like Las Vegas without the prostitutes and gambling. It's a really cute, kind of dorky destination. They have a lot of shows and a lot of fun stuff. So yeah, we were in a Airbnb cabin all weekend, the whole extended family. So
you were all
what
tight.
You're saying totally resonates with me, and all the funny old interactions and the tendencies people have. It's really it's so funny now.
See, because we have this old structure as we go along the journey of really just awareness or knowing thyself, greater consciousness. There's an older version of Brian that they're still used to.
Oh yeah.
And so they'll operate with you in that vibrational way, but you're a different person now. So I wonder how do you respond actually as you are authentically from what you're emitting, who you are in this moment, compared to how they're responding to you based on the old version of Brian? How do we make sense of the old version of us versus the new version?
Yeah, this is a part of that stepping away from judgment. As I mentioned attachment, because I think that's one of the most important things. And if I would also recommend a new book I'm reading called Reality Transurfing. Stephen actually recommended it to me. It's by this Russian guy, Zeland.
Yeah.
Fascinating book, dude. You have to read it. So
I interviewed his protege. I think her name is Renee. I'm blanking on the name.
Oh, you did? Wow.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the name right now, but we'll link that in the show notes. It's fascinating. It's more than just choosing your own thoughts. It's something else.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a whole discussion on its own, but there's a lot of discussion in there about importance, assigning importance to something being the same as attaching and having attachment to something. And when you let go of all of that importance and attachment, you don't become an uncaring like person who, doesn't care about anything or is not invested in anything. It's quite the opposite. When you don't have the attachment, you don't have the distraction and the energy depletion from your attention and your intention. All of your intention is 100% like concentrated in your being and is not leaking out and distracting and into anything. So then when you choose to put your intention and attention on something, you're giving it 120%. And when you do that in like a conversation or a thought or an action, you can become really expanded and multidimensional as a being, and also really absolute, like immutable in a sense of not being affected by low frequencies or thoughts and actions of other people, especially, like the family thinking like, oh, this is the way Brian's supposed to be. And and so forth, you let go of any need for any external validation, because whenever I'm looking for validation, I'm like, well, what, maybe I have a little lack of certainty in something. I now only look within, because within we have all the answers we need. We have our access to God and to the divine is within. And that's a big, I would say that's one of the big parts of the modern malaise, is we've been programmed in Western society to give away our power. Whether it's in a lot of the modern religions are this way, Christianity, Judaism, they're very much, there's a lot of programming there to look without and to have to need these external things to access God, basically, in the divine. And really, it's within. We're all God in a little g sense. We have that spark of the divine within. But when we give away our power, we start to develop these attachments. I need this and that to get to be whole, and that's not the case. So back to the family, being there, it's still a challenge. I still get tripped up sometimes, especially with my mom and my dad, probably more than anything else. But I don't need their validation. I'm there to love them and to express to them how proud I am of them and how grateful I am for them. My mom calls me her greatest investment. And so I'm there showing her how much her investment is paying off and giving her the love that she deserves and really wants. That's all they want. All our parents really want is to be loved by us and like respected and honored.
And accepted for who they are with all of their projections.
With all of their weird...
Their stuff they got from your grandparents as well.
And it's a beautiful thing. And so it is kind of this leap. Like, I love what you said, spend a week with your family to really, really test yourself.
Ramdas.
You get there and you realize how beautiful it is to even with them, be yourself. Just be yourself.
Well, let's go back to the light, because you are a man of light. And also SaunaSpace is my favorite light. It's actually in the studio right here. It's on the screen right now for y'all to check out. So there's a rebrand. There's probably came from some of the downloads you got from Atlantean Theory and from being with Stephen Young.
Actually, it was. And we had some, Mila also helped me a lot with some aesthetic inspiration of some of the Egyptian like colors and themes. And that's going into some of our rebrand. But our rebrand, I'd love to talk about this. So, in the greater context of personal versus work and company life versus personal life, because work is this silly label that's like pregnant with all this meaning.
I hate that word.
And it's like, I know, it makes me want to vomit. Work is not that. When I'm at SaunaSpace, everything that people would call work or call my corporate life is just an extension of me. It's me. It's me, Brian. I'm here with you now. And when I go over there, it's still me. And so the whole company is an extension of my consciousness that actually now has its own consciousness. Like she's still growing and evolving and maybe not quite mature yet, but
so it's your daughter, or it's the female side of you?
She's definitely, she definitely has a feminine archetype. Okay. Come on, Josh, after 12 years, she's definitely one of my children.
Okay, so do you feel that the company is your child as an extension of you?
In a sense, but it's also an extension of me, as an adult, as a fully sentient, self-aware being.
Yeah.
So the rebrand, what I've been working on for a year, is really a deep, complex consciousness expansion of the company. And it started out with if you look at the biohacking space and a lot of the wellness companies, there's a lot of masculinity. There's a lot of like hyper masculinity, honestly, a focus on like benefits, like take this supplement or get this tool, like to get, you got to do this and go out to get X, Y, and Z benefits. It's very transactional. It's very like strong and I would say masculine in sort of the language of it.
Maybe it didn't help that Ben Greenfield was putting red light on his balls. That probably didn't help the narrative of biohacking.
Well, yeah, just the whole idea that you need to do, for your health.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, no, like that's not what I did. My healing story was, I built my own electric light bath and all that. I didn't do anything other than build it. I just sat in there and I was just being. So I go in the sauna and I be. I don't do. And when you be, you step out of sort of the left brain and the transactional 3D world, and you step into the infinite, into the divine side of things, where we have all the things that we need to be happy and healthy inside, like biologically, physiologically. It's all about maintaining and advancing and honing that harmony that we have internally and externally. And so I was like, no, the language is not right. And so I went on this journey, and I worked with a couple really smart, cool people to help me redevelop the identity of the company and the personality of it. So we worked on new messaging that is much more heart focused. The explaining the science. Yes, people understand the science now, and they know our product works. But what people want to know is like, how is this relevant to me? How is this not just going to make me like improve my health? How is this going to make me feel better? How is this going to change my experience and my outlook so that it will help me enjoy the things that I actually care about? And so there's this like work that I did for a whole year in developing new messaging that's more heart focused, more conscious, more validating of the internal perfection that we have. Like, you're not broke and we're not trying to fix you. We're just trying to help you remember you're a being of light. You have this amazing healing systems like in the mitochondria and the cells. They work amazing. They just need a little bit of light, sound, and symbols. And so for me, I focused a lot on the light aspect of that.
So it went from photon to glow.
Yeah, so we changed
the word glow.
Yeah, we changed some of the names to be just more Saxon, basically, and more warm and fuzzy, and more feminine, maybe a little bit, but not just feminine. It's not like the brand is maybe leaning towards that, but really the goal was balance. Balance. It's all about balance between masculine and feminine, and the harmony and the sacred union of the two. So the photon, I came up with that name. It's very scientific. It's very nerdy. And we decided to shift that to the glow, because the light is not just our portable light product is not just sort of delivering this light therapy. It's this presence, that you have. It's the glow of the fire that you bring. So people use it, for targeted therapy and for localized relief, but just as much, maybe more people use it to enhance their indoor environment, for morning reset, for beautiful, clean light after dark, for screen fatigue, for all this crazy matrix light that we have, like correcting that so we can not be so crazy indoors, when we're working at the screens all day long. So we changed that to the glow. The sauna panel used to be the tungsten, also very nerdy. We shifted that to the hearth, and I love this word because it's earth and heart. Word. It's such a beautiful old
Makes
word.
me want to drink cocoa by a fireplace.
I know. We all used to have hearths. So that's what's also cool about some of the rebrand is a whole shift in the education of what people do with our products, not just what they used to do, but what they're doing now. So people have our hearth like on our pedestal or without, but they have it in the living room as a hearth.
Yeah.
Outside of the sauna, they have it as this like light, this fireplace, firelight experience they have. It's super convenient. You just plug it in, and having it in the living room to replace and recreate that experience of the hearth that everybody had, for thousands of years, even before homes, with the fire outside. But everybody had a fireplace and a stove. Yeah, and that's all gone nowadays. So we're bringing that back, and not just the experience of it. But the therapy of it too, the nervous system relaxation that comes with the firelight, and the connection, like that's why they call a fireside chat that. It's where you go to talk. Light opens us up. So the light brings us back into ourselves. And the sauna experience, does that. Like you can go into the sauna space and the thoughts just kind of melts and you go boom, you get grounded back into yourself. Whoa, I'm totally a being of light and this feels amazing and I'm amazing.
Yeah, the best way to do it is without your phone. Because a few times I've taken my phone in there and I'm like, wait, I'm kind of like getting away from the whole purpose of this. Let me just leave my phone outside of it. It's crazy. I sent you a photo of this and I don't know if you remember, but my daughter Naya was born and she had jaundice. And we had taken a couple of the lights out there. And so I had her mom hold the light above Naya. And this ain't medical advice, y'all, right? But this is just my own anecdotal experience. I swear that it helped her. I swear, because it was 9,000 feet. I had to get an oxygen saturator for Carrie Michelle going through delivery.
Wow.
Like it was wild, man.
I remember the photo. Yeah,
you remember the photo,
beautiful.
right? So we used the light. We used that incandescent glow to help her get through the jaundice. And, you know, in my heart of hearts, I know it helped. I'm 100% positive that it helped. And it's not just that it helps people heal. Like you said, it sets a vibration. So if somebody's looking to maybe feng shui their space or just create a space that's more warm and inviting for you and your guests in your home. I mean, every single morning in our old house, we had the SaunaSpace. Actually, our second SaunaSpace, my son broke the bulb, so I get to get a new bulb from you. But we had in the living room. And so instead of a fireplace, because we can't necessarily burn fire in our home, that's not safe, right? There'd be like fire concerns. It's the closest thing we can get to a fire without actually lighting a flame. And I think that's the coolest part about this, because there's so many benefits that, not just from a conversation perspective where we used to congregate around the fire, right? The hearth. What are some of the other ways that it brings people together, not just with themselves, but with their families? The cat we have, Cleo, she loves to sit by the light as well. There's got to be something to that. There's so many ways that you could describe this, but on a high level, if somebody doesn't know anything about the hearth or this firelight, what are a few of the benefits to creating that good vibe in your space?
Well, one of them is that it's something else that you can do besides watching TV in the evening. So when we watch TV in the evening, we're literally plugging into the programming of the Matrix in whatever way or form, and that's a big loss, because the evening, especially for modern Western families where either one or both parents work, that is the time to reconnect. And I think people gravitate towards like phones and TVs because they're so stressed out, and they're using that as this like stress release mechanism that is more dopamine related and like short term, like it's stimulating you in a different way, and it's still keeping you in kind of fight or flight, but it has an addictive aspect of it too, that people get used to that. So instead, do this, sit in front of the hearth, and you're stimulating the connection piece of yourself. You're reminding yourself that I am a being of frequency. We're subject to frequencies. That's why the sun heals us, and why we have all this amazing actually frequency technology nowadays in the wellness space that actually works, because we're subject to frequency. And so we can use these subtle frequencies, this electromagnetism, to calm our nervous system and to open us up and get us out of our thoughts and ease like stress and things like that. And more than anything, I think it helps remind you to just be yourself. And when you're being yourself and you're a loving father and you have a family and like, what could be a better use of your time than to sit there and, connect with each other in the evening. So all of that kind of slowly happens, once you bring this light into your home.
I remember when I was growing up, my grandparents had a red light in the ceiling in their bath, like a heat lamp, right? Mm-hmm. But your tech is way different. So for somebody that looks at it and they go, I could build that myself. I could just go to Home Depot and get a red light bulb, which is, by the way, mostly LED, that's a whole nother topic we can get into. This is very different technology. So something about the way you made the bulb that allows for this healing capacity to come through. How did you design the bulb?
Yeah,
what's in there?
The product from the top down was really intentionally designed to recreate this ancestral experience with light that we used to have, and also be really, really calming and healing and balancing to like all the cells of the body and all the organs of the body and the whole holistically, like us as an organism and also us as like multi-dimensional, amazing star beings. So yeah, the bulb was like a 4-year development to redesign the filament to emit more light therapy. So to get to a higher Kelvin that's like a little bit closer to what the sun does spectrally.
And what is a Kelvin?
Kelvin's a unit of temperature. It's a scientific unit of temperature. So the filament inside runs hotter than a normal heat lamp, and that shifts the spectrum into more high frequency. So we get more near infrared and a little bit more red, but mostly more near infrared as compared to the standard incandescent bulb of old, like what Dr. Kellogg used 120 years ago in his electric light bath when he invented this concept, in the early 20th century. We talked about that in the last podcast.
Yeah, I think 700,000 or 800,000 people saw the clip about you talking about sauna, just that clip alone. So we know people are hungry for this, but many people are like, well, I'll just go make it myself. It's just not the case.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I did 10 or 12 years ago. What we offer though is this 12 years of purpose-driven design to create this experience that's really turnkey and easy for people to use. They don't have to think about it. And the approach, there's a lot of design considerations like with electromagnetic shielding, because man-made EMFs, some types, like electricity, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth are really toxic to us. That's also part of the matrix and the programming is that stuff. It's like the blue light and the 5G. So we've taken great measure to like keep that out of the experience. And then the rest of it, we like beauty. Humans like beauty. It's again, like I don't want to just take a supplement to improve my health. I want to do something that also feels good and like is aligned spiritually. And so I want to be, when I do my sauna, I want to be in this like maximally nervous system relaxing experience where there's no distractions, there's no Bluetooth audio or anything like that. There's no track lighting and no LED stuff, and there's no artificial light. And it allows me to maximally go within and activate this unlimited cellular like technology that we have inside. So yeah, the whole concept has developed over time. It was definitely what I make now is kind of what I envisioned and dreamed in the beginning. It took a long time to get there. But the experience is really different than other saunas. Yeah, it makes you sweat so fast that people don't have so much time for anything anymore. And a regular sauna has to use the air to heat you up. So regular saunas, you preheat in an hour, you get in there for like 40 minutes to an hour. It's like a 2-hour time investment. So what I mentioned before in the last podcast is that you increase your health span, right? You reduce your risk of dying of all things non-trauma related if you use sauna, ideally probably 3 times a week. So if it's a 6-hour investment per week, there's a lot of people who are going to be turned off by that. With my sauna, and especially our new super sauna, it's a 7-bulb system. It's a 15-minute session with no preheating. So I think almost everybody has time for that. And then when you get in there and there's the EMF shielding and the Faraday liner and like the light, it becomes a very transcendental experience. It's not just about healing. It's very meditative. It's a perfect opportunity to do some breath work if you like that kind of stuff. I usually put on some kind of healing frequency. Lately, I've been putting on Ho'oponopono. It's a lovely.
I just got back from Maui. I'm all about it.
Yeah, you're all about that.
I'm all about it.
I recommend that to everybody. It's really fun to listen to.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get in there and there's so many different things going on that are healing you. The disharmony. We talk about health being the harmony in the internal and external environment, the wellness of ourselves. The physiological component is the base of that, but it's also the most basic aspect. The emotional and energetic healing, as you know, is perhaps the most important things that are like challenges in our journey of health is like resolving those emotional and energetic things. And you can actually do that also in the sauna, like because of the light and the heat and the peace that is in there, it's bringing you back into yourself. The grounding mat like grounds you really, really awesomely. And you begin to remember, wow, I'm healthy. and your mind starts to heal and you become more clear. You become more high frequency, like we were talking before. When you're more high frequency, your awareness increases of what's aligned with your highest and best self. And then it really gives you the fuel to like begin to change other things in your life, whether it's diet or lifestyle or maybe just like how you talk to your loved ones. It really has this multifaceted effect on your health that happens over time. So if you go to our website and you look at some of our reviews, they're just shocking. Some of them, none of them are like it came quickly and arrived on time. They're all like these really life-changing stories. Now, it's not the only thing, but it is. We know that sauna is a fundamental tool for wellness in our crazy toxic world. And we know that we're beings of light. We're supposed to get this big dose of near-infrared light from the sun every day. And with the modern lifestyle, not getting enough sunlight, I think the average Western or the average American gets like 5-7 minutes of sunlight a day now, like just going out to the car, basically, going to work. We're really deprived of the things that keep us really resilient and also allow us to be really high frequency and really multidimensional.
Well, everybody knows that vitamin D is important, but when you take vitamin D, even if it's liposomal, it's different than when you get it through the photoreceptors on your skin.
Oh, 100%.
The science on that is really interesting.
Yeah. And the melatonin too is really interesting. So melatonin is the body's number one antioxidant and in all the cells of the body. And the number one way that it's produced is it's not blood-based from the pineal gland being released at the end of the day. It's absolutely made in the cell by a near-infrared light. So the light of the sun literally fills our antioxidant reserves constantly, daily, and you can't get that effect with ingestible melatonin because it doesn't like go in as well into the mitochondria. There's something special about how the light creates it inside deep in the cell that really activates and increases the production of cellular melatonin.
Do you know what that special is when it comes to sublingual, even liposomal vitamin D versus photoreceptors through the sun? Do you know the difference between the two, or it's just special?
Well, I'm talking about melatonin and then near infrared light. The vitamin D, though, there's definitely I'm not as familiar with that science, but the vitamin D is an interesting thing because yes, it's very important to get it from the sun, but the vitamin D comes from UVB, so ultraviolet light that's also ionizing. So it's also mutagenic. It damages our DNA at the same time. But when we get sunlight, we get a little bit of that ultraviolet. We get the vitamin D benefit. We get some DNA oxidation that's going on, but then the near infrared mitochondrial stimulation is going on at the same time, and the melatonin's there as this antioxidant. So you got all this antioxidant production. And you have literally the effects of light therapy, of photobiomodulation. One of them is to correct gene transcription, so to correct how the DNA is read. So the DNA and the epigenetics are being fixed in a much more powerful way than they're being damaged by the sunlight, by the ultraviolet component of the sunlight. So we get that balance. But indoors, with the matrix light, it's only damaging light. There's none of the healing light anymore. So to bring ourselves back into balance, we need to figure out a way to get a lot more near infrared in our modern lifestyle. And that's the incandescent bulb uniquely presents itself as a way to do that.
So to me, when I hear you speak, and also just in my own experience, light is essentially food in some way. So light is feeding us, or we're being starved from it.
Oh, it's absolutely, it's not just nourishing to us. It is our number one food.
It's a nutrient source.
It is our number one nutrient. Actually, if you get a lot of sunlight in the summer, like 3-4 hours of sunlight a day, shirts off, you'll find you're less hungry. And this
is exactly what happened in Maui. I was in the sun at the beach all day.
You don't need to eat as much heavy, dense foods. You have some coconut water and some fruit and you're good.
Yeah.
The sun can actually satisfy like up to 70% of your caloric needs.
What do you make of these people that just sun gaze? The sun gazers, even the breatharians, where they're not eating food. There's studies and data on people that haven't eaten meals in years, which I'm like, how is that even possible? But they're transcending biology in a way. Have you heard of this? What do you make of that?
Actually, I was studying astrogeomancy in Ecuador recently with, it was a course Stephen Young set up, and Samuel Lee was there doing his own course. It was really fascinating. We were on the sacred land, and when we were there was a woman named Satya who was there as a friend of mine, and she did just this. She did a sun gazing kind of experiment where she started out with 1 minute and increased to like 40 minutes from sunrise of over a period of, I think, weeks and maybe months, to where she could sit there and stare at the sun for like over half an hour. And I met this woman. She's not blind or anything or damaged. She's like so aware, such a conscious being. And so I believe, what I believe is that we're a lot more powerful than we think we are. We're programmed to think that we need to eat food all the time.
Yeah.
And that's like with fasting. It's also a fascinating thing with fasting. Like I just did a 48-hour fast. I used to be really scared of this, and I just did this for the first time ever. And it's so fascinating how conditioned we are to constantly put things in our mouth to eat and snack all the time. And we don't really need it all the time. We eventually need it, right? But we can go long periods of time without digesting anything. And if we have light, if we're getting lots of light, we can go even longer. So the sun gazing and the light eater cults, where they just drink water and get sunlight for like weeks. That's a recognition of this innate light technology we have in our bodies, and also an acceptance of the absolute and like a complete like detachment from like the worldly, the moral coil and the worldly needs. I need to eat things. I need to sleep. It's like, no, I'm completely infinite. I can produce all my own energy as long as I'm living in alignment with the way I'm designed to live, by the divine. And light is like the biggest component of it.
What do you mean by moral coil?
Mortal coil.
Oh, mortal coil. Okay,
well,
so
like
just the trappings
our
of
moral
life.
desires, desires for food and just mortal things, sex, love,
I can attest to what you're saying. Like when we were in Maui and we were just going to the beach, I don't think I ate till like 2:00 in the afternoon. But it wasn't like I was trying to intermittent fast and track my macros with my CGM. I was just enjoying the beach and being in salt water and being in the sun. And yeah, people are probably thinking like, well, I don't have a beach, or, I don't have sun. Everybody's got sun. Even if the clouds are covering New York City, somebody can still walk on the street and just be there. The sun's still penetrating, right? It's still coming through the clouds. Yes, we're still getting that. I mean, it's not direct sun, but we're still getting some benefit.
Absolutely. The sun has this wide spectrum, and water begins to absorb light at 980 nanometers, which is in the middle of near infrared, but the light absorption is still poor. Once you get into mid and far infrared, you have 100% absorption of those wavelengths. So those wavelengths are not getting through the clouds, but guess what is getting through the clouds? The optimal heat therapy wavelengths are getting through partially, and the photobiomodulation wavelengths, 700 to 1,000. So the wavelengths that give us energy in our cells and activate mitochondrial healing, inflammation, and reduction, and all the DNA repair stuff and the anti-aging stuff, that's getting through the clouds. So even on a cloudy day, you're getting the benefit from the most magical, nourishing component of sunlight, that near infrared component that not only gets through the clouds and the atmosphere, but actually also penetrates the most deeply into the body. So if you want to photobiomodulate your brain, red light doesn't get in deep. Red light is absorbed by melanin and hemoglobin, which we also have. We have blood all over in our bodies. The only wavelength that penetrates bone tissue consistently and deeply is near infrared. So we have mitochondria in our bones, but like the biggest, thickest bone in our body is our skull. And so nourishing, arguably the most important part of our nervous system, is our brain. We need near infrared light to do that. So even on a cloudy day, you're getting that nourishment. And when you use an electric light like a SaunaSpace light, you're getting that nourishment.
So my buddy had a TBI in 2012, and he just messaged me yesterday. And I told him, okay, not only are you going to use supplementation for anti-inflammation, but also use the firelight, use the glow. Have you come across any research on, putting it proximally like close to the head for TBI, and how can the glow light or this photobiomodulation help TBI?
Yeah, well, I can't make medical claims, Josh.
None of this is medical advice, y'all. Even though the best stuff comes from podcasts.
But I have many customers who have had great improvement actually in traumatic nervous system injury, not just to the brain, with our products. One of them's this guy Calvin Belaster, who fell off like a water tower. He's based in Austin, so he fell off this water tower, smashed his brain. He was in the coma in a hospital for a long time, and using the SaunaSpace sauna for a long time, for months and years, it slowly helped him to completely recover. There's some other things that he was doing too, but I mention that because if we look at the photobiomodulation literature, there's so much research in improvement of TBI and improvement of neuropathy symptoms. So when you have a TBI, you have damage to your nerve cells and your nervous system somewhere. And then in the brain, you've had this impact and there's literally the cells are damaged. So light therapy comes in, the near infrared light goes into and hits the mitochondria in the brain cell, and it promotes regeneration and healing and inflammation reduction and anti-aging. So it corrects the function of the cell itself. And on top of that, when you're doing all of the cells of the brain, it's helping to reestablish connections and repair the interworking of all the cells together collectively. So absolutely, there's such interesting research in improvement of TBI, which conventional medicine says there's not a whole lot you can do after a certain period of time. That's absolutely not the case at all. But we need to use tools that are aligned with human biology, and light therapy is a really powerful one. So it's not just TBI, but also recovery from stroke, which is the same thing. It's damage to the brain. And people who have neuropathic symptoms, like people who have MS and fibromyalgia and things like that, where their nervous system is not working right, and it results in these strange sensations, gut issues, like balance issues, movement issues. People are seeing amazing results from that using photobiomodulation and also with our products, which include photobiomodulation. I would also mention, though, that heat has its own role. So sauna is also improving the functioning of the nervous system. And both the light therapy and the sauna therapy improve cognitive function. So what's going on here? One of the things is that heat promotes the production of brain-derived neurotropic factor in the brain cells. And heat, that's like Miracle-Gro for your brain. It's a very important factor in your brain cells. And also the heat, one of the effects of heat is through the creation of heat shock proteins. One of their roles is to correct protein folding. So the proteins are these complicated structures they're the kind of, I call them the line workers in the body. The assembly workers are doing all the hard work in all the cells. Most of them, as soon as they're generated by the ribosomes, as they're coming out, and when they're newly made, they're already misfolded, like 20 to 30% of them. And so there's this built-in system of correcting the workers that are made that are not like perfectly made, is constantly correcting them with heat therapy, with sauna. And when you do that in your brain cells, you're improving protein function and the proteome. So where the proteins are, and when they refold, they're like lock and key mechanisms. Whenever they're talking to each other and doing things, all of those connections and all that communication is improved also in the brain. So there's a fair amount of research of improvement of like neuropathy, fibromyalgia, and things like that with sauna use, which goes back to, I think I might have mentioned in the last podcast, is the other like huge amazing thing about sauna is that frequent use of sauna reduces risk of dementia. And that's like a 30-year human study now in Finland that's still ongoing with thousands of people. And what's going on there? It's doing something to correct the resilience and the plasticity of the nervous system, of the brain.
Dude, there's no one perfectly stated and living their dharma like you to lead this movement. I've always sensed that you have a deep sense of touch to your feminine side, but the way you can go from science to energy work, and you can talk about the pyramids and the folding of proteins. Like, y'all can feel this. I mean, you're literally living your Dharma. It's palpable. It's who you are, like, just acknowledging that. And it's just so fun to talk with you because you do have this one foot in science, but you also have a deep understanding of spirituality. And I think this is what's being called forth in the world right now.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
That's a false division. Back in the day.
Well, you didn't let me finish.
Okay,
it's the blending of what's being called forth in the world right now. Science has become a new God, and the old deity of God, which was like Santa Claus in the sky, that doesn't work either. So there's enmeshment that's being called forth between these two, where they're actually all the same thing because they all emanate from the same source point, the same intelligence. But it's been so disparate and so siloed for so long. I mean, look what happened with the freaking lockdowns and the COVID theater. I mean, just the absolute insanity of making science a god and then people just denouncing all of science. There's room for everyone at the table is what I'm saying. We all eat from the same table. We all pull from the same source point. So I think that's you and SaunaSpace are bringing this cohesion, this marriage, this confluence of science and spirituality. So that's what I was going to finish with.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah. It's each of these groups has got stuck into a fractionated portion of the original spiritual science. So, the modern scientists are really focused on the physics of it and sort of, I guess, more the religious spiritual crowd, even the new age spiritual crowd is focused on spirituality as like this other thing. And they're both the same. Like the biological, we're multidimensional, unlimited beings, the I am, the capital I am, and we're sitting in this biological organism that has dimensionalized aspects of it, but both of them are the same. We're an accretion of consciousness. So like there's the all, the infinite, the divine, that's like the super consciousness, the cosmic consciousness. But we're ourselves in our individuality, we're this collection kind of let's call them consciousness units that has decided to have this experience in conjunction with this instrument of this biological form that we sit in. And the two are really the same thing. So, when we talk about like our head versus our heart, and decisions of the heart versus decisions of the mind, it's all different aspects of the same thing, all simultaneous and in the same space. And we're all existing in the same time all the time. Like there is no linear time. That's also a modern construct. Time is more like a territory, and all of the timelines are like different areas in the territory. And so when people talk about time travel or meeting their past selves or talking to their aunt who's passed, wherever it's because everything is existing. It reminds me of that movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It's this funny kind of a little bit weird movie. But anyway, everything's like everywhere all the time. And we're that's why I said in the beginning, I think before we started recording, that things are looking good right now. Like things are going well. It's not doom and gloom. We are in an era of consciousness awakening and activation that's phenomenal and unique. And I feel so grateful to like be here now where we're at. Like it's
same. People
are activating and remembering on so many levels everywhere across the earth. And you mentioned the COVID era and all that. That was crazy, but that was also a stimulus for people to really start to look at their own health and be like, well, what can I do? What tools do I have at my disposal at home? What's in my body that can maybe work better than anything else? And so we're in an era where more than ever, people are considering on both sides, the spiritual new age, they're looking more at the science and the physics and like being wow, this actually is when the egg and the sperm unite, there's like this flash of light that occurs.
And science can't explain it.
And nobody can explain it, right? Yeah. And just the concept of like, okay, if all of a sudden I take everything away, like Zaylan talks about this in reality transurfing, take everything away, me, you, the body, the universe, there's nothing. It's just void. What's left? there's still something left. There's still an I am. There's a consciousness, a collection of consciousness that's there, that exists, not separate, but like beyond everything else. And that's who we are. And we're figuring out that accessing that, activating that, understanding, being more aware of that, there's actually a science to it. It's not just a woo-woo thing where you go, there's actually tools that you can use to activate it. Breath work, meditation, light, sound. Yeah, it's light, sound, and frequency. You know, it all is coming continually back to, light, sound, and symbols. You know, and there's a lot of ancient symbols that was one of the beautiful aspects of the trip, was like you see some of these symbols, and you see not just the Egyptian hieroglyphics, but some of the Atlantean inherited symbols, and you're like, there's a knowing there. You're like, I know that. I've seen that somewhere.
Yeah,
before.
when I see the Ankh, which I'm sure you saw a lot in the hieroglyphics. Yeah. So the Ankh, it's on the screen right now for y'all to check out. So there's a loop at the top, and it's very similar to the cross, actually, which is why I almost can sense, or I can remember without knowing the whole etymology and science, that the cross most likely came from the Ankh. And the Ankh is actually the being that is referenced or witnessing this void that you talk about.
Yeah, the Ankh is the key of life. It also happens to have the shape of the female sexual organs, the ovaries and the uterus, which is the key of life. That's all life is created.
Right now.
Yeah, the Ankh is one of the three like fundamental symbols in the Egyptian like symbology. The Ankh, there's the Ankh is the key of life. The Jed, which is the stability, that's the column. That's like the spinal column. It's like a bar with these horizontal rods in it. And then there's the name escapes me, but the staff. So that's like the authority, the power, the will, the choice. And those three, you see those everywhere all over in Egypt. And really fascinating. Just seeing those symbols and touching them on the walls and feeling like, ooh, there's something there that we're all connected to. And it's a powerful experience to go there and just remember all that. There's also, I have to mention this one thing. So in the British, in the museum, in the Egyptian museum there in Cairo, there's this thing called the pyramidion. So it's a pyramid that's about this tall, that's in the shape and the architecture, exact dimensions of the Great Pyramid, and I think more or less. And it's made of a stone that doesn't exist on Earth. It's black, first of all, and it's like really alien looking. And it's not a mineral that exists on Earth. So it came from somewhere else to the Earth, but the thing is perfectly cut, dude, like in this pyramidal shape, and it's ancient. And it's got a little bit of hieroglyphics that was scratched on there, basically graffitied on there by the Egyptians. Where did this come from, and how was it cut like that perfectly? There's so many examples of that again and again and again. Also, there's this thing called the wheel. I forget what it's called, but it's in the museum there. It's when you go there, it's described as a vase, as a holder of flowers, but it's actually a propeller pump, but it's carved out of stone. And you see this thing that's carved like a modern pump propeller, but it has these curves in it that are so precise and perfect. And it's stone, dude. It's not metal. How did they make this? And what were they using a propeller pump for? You know, there's so many examples of that again and again and again that clearly it's not just that, you know, there were Atlanteans that they inherited from. The Egyptians themselves were using technology that we're not aware of. And I wanted to mention, you asked, like, what did I bring back from there that I'm applying to SaunaSpace now? So if you go to south of Luxor, you go to the Dendera Temple. It's a little bit south of Luxor. It's like a late Egyptian temple. It's more in the Greek era, so it's a little bit more modern temple. And there's a secret area you can go down to that's subterranean. And in there's these stone carvings on the walls of what's called the Dendera lamp. And you can see this online. You can check it out. It's called the Dendera lamp. And it's this carving, dude, of what looks exactly like an Edison lamp. And it has a cable coming out of it, and the cable goes into the Edison lamp, and there's a snake in the lamp. And there's this alien with a snake's head, like this being standing there that has the head of a snake or a reptile. That totally looks like an alien. And he's holding these knives in front of the lamp, like danger, like radioactive or something like that. And the cable goes back and connects to what looks like a transformer, like you have on the tower that powers your home. It totally looks eerily like an electric light bulb with a transformer and a cable connected to it. So that was one picture. And then there's this other picture where they have like all these cables, 4 cables coming out of this device that goes into 4 transformers that then is shooting rays down and creating this ball of electricity with lightning bolts in it. And it's carved into the wall there. And like there's these workers around and they're like manipulating it for some like practical and intentional purpose. And it's like, what were they doing? And what is this? And there's other carvings also in that same little crypt of Egyptian god figures holding these things that look like magical instruments. And they're like combination of ankhs and wajas and jeds, and like they look like this magical instrument. I mean, it's like clearly like some kind of tool they were using, and they're like holding it and directing it for purposes. And so there's so much there to basically, I just want everybody to appreciate that Egypt is way older than modern archaeology is saying, you know, like basically 6,000 years or less. It's way older than that. And it harkens back to this part of ourselves, of humanity, that dates back probably before Atlantis, before the antediluvian times, like maybe even like way before that, like hundreds of thousands of years. And we just don't remember. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But we have no evidence, you know, that it didn't, you know, there's so much evidence that it did happen. It's like so much more than the classical narrative that the Egyptians made all this stuff on their own. Like,
so the carvings, what wisdom from the carvings are you bringing to SaunaSpace?
Well, it's
they're stamps in stone. They're not carvings, and they're stamps.
Yeah, they're
in stone,
stamps
right?
in stone. So
yeah.
it's they're carvings on stone walls. They're really elaborate. So, I'm going to tease you right now and not tell you everything. There's some frequency technology that I'm developing and trying to figure out and experiment with in how to incorporate it into the product experience. And that's an ongoing experiment. And this was kind of some inspiration for it, as well as like the whole experience and just being deeply in meditation and figuring out like, you know, what can be done with frequency. There's like so much. So much. So anyway, Egypt's way older than we thought. Atlantis is real. And there's something about us being part of this larger opera where there are star beings involved, you know, as we speak. And we're with them, you know, and we're part of this experiment, you know, as I said in the beginning, of free will and consciousness.
What do you wish that people knew about being authentically themselves and building a scaffolding of support so that their physical body can be the most nourished by light? What do you really want people to get? If there was a high level thought or a high level seed that you could plant in their garden and it would actually grow? Because we've explored a ton of concepts, and like the show notes for this will probably be 50 bullets deep, which I love. But on a high level, what can someone take away of light actually nourishing them on a basic human understanding level?
Well, it's definitely a challenging one. The more we're, you know, the more we're attached to the programming that we have, the less receptive we actually are. You know, there's some people who use a therapy and they don't get well. And it's like, why don't they get well? This therapy is clearly working for almost everybody. And it's a mindset. Definitely, it's a mindset issue. So what I love about our product and what we're doing is we're gently shifting the physiology and the consciousness of the person who's using it back into alignment with the highest and best self. So we're removing the toxins, we're reactivating, like, you know, we're promoting cellular rejuvenation and healing, And it's a slow process that they don't have to do anything. They just sit in there and be, they get in, use their sauna, use their light. When they use the glow light, it's like passive. But slowly but surely, there's a shift that occurs, and everybody's on their own journey. Everybody's on their own timeline. There's no rush in this. There's nothing to like obsess over any kind of like goal. There's not really a destination. It's just an awareness of, I want to be my best self. And how do I do that? Well, we need to purify the temple and create clarity and awareness of who I truly am. Once you get some of the you deal with some of the basic physiological like dissonance, your clarity and your awareness builds, and your awareness of your own self, it definitely grows, and you can begin to explore other amazing healing tools that are out there. Like the SaunaSpace is not the only tool I've used. I've done a lot of spiritual and emotional work to correct and resolve the programming in so many ways. And I know you have too, and a lot of people in the space, but it like at the same time that some of those higher level challenges resolve a lot of physiological symptoms, for a lot of people, there needs to be physiological improvement first to increase the capacity to cope and handle some of these like intense emotional and spiritual challenges that really everybody has in some way or another.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it is you don't have to do it, and you don't have to force it. Your being naturally wants to be this way. So when you give it the things in a natural way, and you change and you start eating more naturally, and you start dealing with all the things that you talk about with all your amazing speakers that you have on the show, there's a shift that happens. And then, you start to look inward. And what I would say is that I don't think my story is unique. I think that everybody has the answers within. And there's different ways and different amazing guides out there to help you figure out yourself. But just know, when you're with a guide, or you're with a fascia worker, or a therapist, or whoever you're with, they're only helping you remember what you already know. They're not teaching you anything, and you're not missing anything. And stepping away from that, you get into like really appreciating and using the unlimited nature of yourself. And like, that's your divine side that everybody has. It's all there. Nobody is limited, and nobody's broken, and nobody is prevented access to this. Everybody has access to this all the time right now as we speak. It's a choice. It's ultimately a choice. But sometimes it really helps to do some groundwork to realize, wow, I have a choice. I can do what I want to do. And the more you do what's aligned with your highest and best self, the more you're true to yourself, I would say the more meaning you have in your life, the more purpose you have, the more happiness, the more health, the more connection, the more wellness and wisdom that you have. It's all coming from within. There's another part of the modern malaise is focusing on helping others. And we all want to help others. I want to help others. You do. I mean, we have that natural inclination, right? We're instinctively, like in the family, we want to take care of the family. The truth is, though, when we let go of all those attachments and all that importance, and we just work on ourselves, we have this oblique effect that happens where we're more present and available and influential and effective in actually helping the people we want to help.
I call this the personal trainer yoga therapist syndrome, where imagine a flashlight. I'll speak in light terms because you're a man of light. So if I'm holding a flashlight and I'm a yoga instructor or a personal trainer or a therapist of any kind, and I spend my whole life dedicated to shining light on the darkness, I'm holding a flashlight. So there's still darkness between my hand and myself. I say, why don't we get rid of the flashlight and hold up a lantern instead? Because when I hold up a lantern, I get light shined on me and I shine it on other people. So I'd much rather shine a light on everything, including me, because then I don't fall into this trap of becoming the healer who's wounded that's trying to heal other people. Yeah. Because there's so much darkness between myself and really a noble pursuit, which is being of service to others. So it's not a knock on personal trainers or therapists. I mean, there's probably incredible, life-changing people across the world that do these arts. But it's really about holding up a lantern so that I'm also being illuminated in my healing process as well. I don't have it all figured out. I've been doing this podcast for almost 10 years, like 700 episodes, right? I learn every single time, just like I've learned from you right now. And I think if we can just cultivate the curiosity while we hold this lantern, where we don't fall into the trap of just being of service to everyone else, which, by the way, can be a spiritual bypass of its own, man, our life can be great. We can be curious, we can thrive, and we can actually see the parts of us that are being called forth to be healed in the darkness if we hold the lantern. Get rid of the flashlight, y'all.
Yeah, and I would even go a step deeper and say that we actually are the lantern, and
that would make sense that you would say something like that.
and yeah, when you shine the light on yourself, yeah, you reveal those dissonances, those areas that maybe are not even dark; they're just out of alignment, know, in one way or another, and you're called to address those. And there are some amazing light workers and healers out there, and therapists and stuff like that. And those are the best ones and the most effective ones, the ones who've worked on themselves as a life practice, not just like a one and done kind of thing. And they're continually and being having like that childlike curiosity of, hey, I'm just going in and having a matcha at this coffee shop, but this could be the best matcha I've ever had. And I could have this amazing experience. Every time we have this new experience, it reprograms us. And we want that, we want to like brush our teeth with our other hand and do things differently. And it's also with using our products in the sauna, you want to vary it. The human wants the variety because our consciousness wants to learn through experience of new things to incorporate that into this like growing perspective and understanding of reality.
Man, I know you learned this from your kids because Nova and Naya teach me so much about curiosity and novelty. Every day, they're just authentically themselves. There's no barrier between their conscious and unconscious mind. It doesn't fucking exist. He's literally him and she's literally her. And it's so beautiful to witness. And I'm reminded to slow down. I'm reminded to be more present. I'm reminded to be a better man and to take care of myself and to be more loving and to not be in judgment and to have compassion and full understanding for the human experience. How have your children shaped your awareness of Brian and the way that you operate in the world?
Well, they're definitely more true to themselves than most adults. And it's very humbling. And,
how so?
Well, they see things as they are. My 7-year-old Yuval, he has these insights sometimes, these grasps of reality that are like really way beyond his years, where you're like, and it's not something that he's taught. It's just something that he's observing, of human behavior or whatever. And I'm just shocking sometimes. And it reminds me of like you say, there's in some ways there's more for them to teach us and than us them. And that's because fundamentally, when we get on this healing path, we're trying to get back to being our true selves and get rid of all this crazy conditioning we got from school and society and our parents and everything else. And they're these shining light beings, these shining examples of how to do that almost like effortlessly. Sometimes when you're healing and you get into some heavy stuff, it's like, wow, this is really intense. And then you're reminded that of that sometimes there's no process, there's no work to be done. There's just an acceptance of the divine and acceptance of truth and reality and letting go of these things that we held on to and were so important to us, for such a long time, these truths that weren't really our truths at all. They were just told to us and we just believed. So yeah, definitely. And both of them, my 12-year-old Shefa too, we have interesting conversations and they have their own perspective on the way things are. And they're just more present. They're more in the now. They're more in themselves. And then it's really beautiful also to see them experience some programming and then try to understand it and try to process it and then ask questions like, why did they say that on TV, Dad? Like, what does that mean? And to have, and that always sparks these amazing conversations of like, well, what is the programming? You know, because you can't prevent them from getting programmed all the time or being a subject to all this exposure, right? Nowadays, especially with the internet and phones. So we just have conversations about what does it really mean? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to say to you to get you to do, to get you to buy, to get you to think? And encouraging that conversation instead of limiting it because they're going to have it anyway. And so my goal is, as best as I can do, is to teach them and help them understand how to be independent, conscious beings, understanding their choice and knowing that their most fun reality is going to be them being themselves, you know, being true to themselves. It's not just about this lofty goal of being wise and being true. It's like, it's actually the most fun way to live and the most enjoyable, the most joyful, the most peaceful, but like the laughter and the pure joy of things ultimately is most profound when you're just being yourself. And people love that. When you meet someone who's like really just themselves and they just don't give a heck about anybody else, what anybody else thinks, there's this like sense of enlightenment they have that's really magnetic and
they're liberated.
They're just liberated. And
they're liberated.
It can't but bring you up. You're like, wow, like I love this. This feels so good.
The other day, I was doing some work in the yard and out of nowhere, Nova comes up and he goes, "Good job, Daddy." And I just it broke me down to tears. I'm like, wow, how special that is that he's able to just see me and give me that love because I gave that to him. I've probably told him good job and that was his conditioning. So the way that our neurology and the way that our emotion is expressed through this physical body is so profound. And if we keep the physical body clean or as clean as we can, we're kind of in a cosmic soup of toxins. So we need an arbitrage of like SaunaSpace, supplementation, good relationships, loving awareness. But it really hit me in the heart because I thought, wow, everything I say and my entire way of being, even without me saying anything, he's absorbing. He's being encoded. His epigenetics are turning off and on based on how I'm actually being. And so the greatest gift that I could give to my children and my lady and myself and my business and this podcast is to fucking be Josh Trent, just to be myself and not hold worry or contempt about how others might see me. Like, you know, look, if you don't like the podcast, like I love you anyways, you can go listen to another one. Because this is who we are. This is what we're talking about here. Ever since I was a little kid, the biggest question for me, Brian, was how do I live my life well? Like, how do I really thrive and like grab the orange and have the juice drip down my arm and be naked on a cliff over the ocean? Like however you want to describe it. How do I live my life well? How do I really grit and get the best out of life that I possibly can? I mean, that's why on the mic flag, it says wellness, because I think in order to have wellness, one has to develop the courage and the capacity to have maturity mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially to really earn being well. We're born well, but things get in the way of this. Have you learned something that's palpable from either one of your children that really imprinted you with either gratitude or more curiosity or more wonder? In other words, what have your children taught you about wellness?
One of the big things is they're a constant reminder of me letting go of the need to express my opinion to others and have it be heard, you know, and that validation, you know, that comes from that because I realized, you know, part of my program that I got was that. And then I've definitely found myself in instances where I'm trying to teach them something that I feel they need to know. And it like doesn't go over well. It's not well received. It's not and there's like a disconnect. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying to educate them. I'm trying to sort of almost like be pedantic, like a teacher, and talk down to them when really it's their curiosity is so powerful. It can just drive everything. And so when they have something that they say where they don't understand, I try to be really careful now not to judge that or shut that down or say, oh no, that's wrong. Actually, you have that, this is the way you need to think about it. Instead, just have a conversation with them. Like, oh, well, what are you observing? Why do you think that? And then I'll give my perspective, and to be less like demanding that they think the way I do, because that's the way I learned from my parents. Like, and like you said, like, you shouldn't be what your dad or your mom taught you. You should be as a father, as a Josh Trent father. You should be Josh Trent. You shouldn't be anything that has any tie to any perception of anyone else. You have to be yourself. And just doing that, you become a father and a leader and a being that's just glowing and like so positively influential on them. They see that and they're like, wow, I can just be myself. I don't need to follow any of the programming. And that's really empowering, more than anything else. It's empowered. And like, especially in the matrix that we have nowadays, like, being yourself is very challenging nowadays. There's so much we're told nowadays. So to be yourself and to just like, that's what I've learned from them. It's really interesting in all of my work I've done the last couple of years to be back and get into better alignment with myself. They have been my greatest teachers, like, because they're already just being themselves so beautifully.
I got a really profound teaching once in an ayahuasca ceremony. And by the way, I'm not saying that y'all should go do plant medicine, but I remember I was sitting there and in the morning, everybody shares afterwards, like, hey, this is what happened for me. And I just had this real moment of brutal truth that for like 37 years, I was just pretending to be myself. And so I said to everyone, I just feel like I've been practicing to be myself. I've been practicing who I thought Josh Trent should be. And from that moment on, it's been this understanding and this everyday learning how to love Josh so that I can just continue to be Josh. This beautiful soul that came from the source where nothing is, there's no thing in everything. And that's been the most fun, dude. The most fun I've ever had in my life was learning the brutal truth that I was practicing to just be myself. I wasn't actually just being myself. And I wish that gift on fucking everyone. It almost makes me cry just even thinking about it. Like, everyone needs to really look in the mirror. Are you being yourself, or are you being this catapulted, projected version of both societal and parental influence? And I think that is the greatest gift for our kids, that really, in a way, you don't even need a plant medicine ceremony. Just be a parent and you'll get that reflected back to you.
Yeah, there's and it's okay, that it took time. Like,
it took some time.
There's no shame in that. There's no regret. There's no frustration.
No.
That's what you sort of, your higher self chose to take that path to learn that lesson. And it's so amazing that you're still young and healthy and you have this awareness now. Like, same thing for me. Like, I just poured my whole body, mind, and spirit, blood, sweat, and tears into everything I was doing with SaunaSpace, and to a lesser extent, time-wise, also with my family. But like, everything went outward into that. And it was a long lesson for me to have. And it was a really hard lesson. But looking back now, I'm so glad I had that. I went to that side of the polarity, so I could swing back and like be wholly and truly into myself. And I understand like what it is to be completely externally oriented. So that's also part of the experience and part of the game. It's like, that you have to experience the whole polarity, the light and dark of all of it, to get out of it, basically, to like level up in the game.
I feel like everything that you've eloquently stated and that I've offered to this conversation has been centered around actually being honest and caring for the physical body that we live in. Because that's essentially what the red light therapy and the infrared therapy is doing. It's caring, it's giving light, nutrients, and food to the body. If that's dirty, much like I've given this analogy before, if you plug in a dirty outlet, the electricity is not going to flow. So if we ourselves are dirty, or we're filled with toxins, or we're not getting enough light, it's almost, I wonder how you feel about this, it's almost impossible to do the deeper emotional and mental healing work that's necessary if the body is blocking it so severely. Do you resonate with that? What are your thoughts on that?
It's very challenging. We're frequency beings, and we have those electromagnetic systems in our bodies, cellularly, at the quantum level, the meridians of the body, the blood flowing down the arteries, everything has an electromagnetic component to it. And any one of, these heavy metals goes in and disrupts that and limits our capacity and also our perception. It limits our awareness. So yeah, like I even recently, I found myself, I've started this new workout style. It's called GOATA. It's like based on child movement. It's really cool.
Oh, and is it like MoveNat, like primal movement?
It's like this mobility approach. It's called GOTA. Anyway, it's only like 15 minutes a day. And I found myself really avoidant, like over the last couple of months, like 15 minutes a day. And I haven't consistently been doing it every day. And I chose this and I really enjoy it and love it. And it's something I can do anywhere because it doesn't require like any props really. And I found myself like, all of a sudden I realized, wow, I was totally avoiding this. Like for some reason in my mind, I don't know, like Watiko or something. It was like totally avoiding this thing.
Why?
And I just realized that I still, even at this point, in some aspect, I was attaching more importance to like work and taking care of others and getting things done versus my personal care in this one aspect. I'm still doing the sauna, eating really well, no alcohol and things like that. But like this one thing, it was so funny that there's there's that limitation that can happen with everyone. So you definitely want to prime your experience by having the cleanest vessel possible. And then when you get really clean and you step into and remember your high frequency nature and your multidimensional nature, it really allows you to perceive subtle dissonances and subtle things that are messed up, that require your attention, that you absolutely had no perception or capacity to deal with before.
No doubt.
The body is our most powerful instrument, and taking care of it is important. And I would say it's very accessible nowadays. Like all these tools we have, all this awareness we have, this is not the 1900s. The internet has allowed a proliferation of knowledge and an awareness that our forefathers, our ancestors could not benefit from. Like all the mystery schools and all the esoteric stuff that used to be controlled by the Freemasons and stuff, that's all, it's all out there. All this spiritual science now, it's all coming together. You have to look for it and you have to kind of see through the matrix because there's a lot of junk out there, but it nonetheless is available to all of us without going to a mystery school for 33 years and like studying all this stuff. We can have it in the comfort of our home. It's such an amazing, beautiful reality that we live in right now, where it's just all at our fingertips and it's really accessible. And even a lot of the biohacking technology is the concepts behind it are affordable. Like a sauna. If you can't afford a sauna, you can just heat your bathtub up really hot and get in there. You get a really nice sweat response and light, like get out in the sun, like if nothing else.
Yeah, no one has to purchase anything. If we lived exactly in the way that our ancestors lived, we would all be ultimately healthy. But the challenge is that we don't live in our ancestors' world anymore. Yeah, right? It's a different construct.
I would also flip to the other side of that polarity and say there are, because of the modern stressors, the EMFs, the cosmic toxicity that you talked about.
The cosmic soup, that there are some
more extraordinary measures that we ought to take. And sauna is one of them. Light therapy is definitely one of them. I think fasting is one of them. And then certain binders. I'm also taking some binders now, like EDTA, with some kind of frequency, and activated. Dr. Group of Global Healing has activated ozonated charcoal to help detox some of the modern toxins that our ancestors didn't have, like nanotechnology, graphene oxide. It's in all the drugs now. It's actually used in agriculture now.
Is it helpful with Roundup detox as well? Glyphosate?
Well, sauna is absolutely glyphosate's water soluble. So yeah, you can sweat that out totally. But these nanoparticles, our human biology is not really well designed to deal with because of their size and their nature. And we're all exposed to this nowadays. We're all also exposed to, in the modern pharmaceutical era, genetically engineered E. coli. Those are used to make drugs, basically, and make things like the mRNA vaccines were made in these genetically engineered E. coli that are actually contaminating all of humanity. And these E. coli are antibiotic resistant. They have gene strains, they have peptide coding in them, sequences in them that shut down cellular hydrogen peroxide production, which is an immune response. It's like really important. So it makes them really resilient and tough to kill. And it really, it doesn't matter, what your stance is on COVID and the different pharmaceutical solutions to that. Nowadays, everyone has been exposed to the spike protein and the E. coli that were used to make the spike proteins, whether it was in the vaccines or the manufactured virus itself. All of it we're exposed to when we breathe on each other. So we're all contaminated. Our microbiome is contaminated with these genetically engineered E. coli that conjugate in our microbiome and spread, and then are producing some of these modern toxins like spike protein and then the graphene oxide that comes into our body we're also exposed to separately. When they're exposed to microwave signal like 5G and 4G cell phone signal, the graphene oxide creates these fractalline structures that group together and spiral out in the blood, and it causes like clogging basically of the arteries and coagulation. And so there's certain things you can take to remove this stuff from your body, like EDTA is a really powerful one. And actually the combination, this is more recent research by one of my friends, Maria Chrysler, who's a parasitologist, is that you can combine SaunaSpace or other sauna with red light, which you get with SaunaSpace, and a PMF to break up these nanoparticle structures they're called hydrogels that like form in your body and your body like can't get rid of. The combination of the heat and a little bit of a electromagnetic zap from the PMF technology, and then combining it also sometimes with EDTA to help bind it and grab it and get rid of it, is really uniquely powerful in addressing this. This is another layer of the matrix that unfortunately like needs to be addressed nowadays, but we have the tools. Also, one of the interesting things with the COVID virus is that it codes for these like snake venom peptides, right? There's this whole interesting other narrative of like why is the COVID vaccine why is the COVID virus damaging? And a part of it has to do with it creating basically snake venom peptides in the body, and the snake venom peptides bind to the NAD receptors in your nerves, and they cause symptoms of envenomation. That's how snakes, the snake venom damages your nervous system. It's not the bite that kills you with most snakes. It's like these peptides in the venom that attach to your nervous system in your brainstem and like start to disrupt your ability to breathe and like to move and stuff like that. So nicotine is the only thing that binds more strongly to the NAD receptor. So there's people who have had long haul COVID symptoms who completely resolve them with a nicotine patch. It's really interesting. So, like why did God create the tobacco plant, and like, this might be a reason for that. But it's just a continued awareness that as we evolve and the forces of consciousness, become greater and things go well, so too does the matrix kind of accelerate. And there's more and more things coming out that we need to continue to be aware of to keep ourselves, happy and healthy. And the forces of good and consciousness I would say, are totally winning. And we're continually coming out with new tools to keep ourselves in alignment, keep ourselves true to ourselves in the face of what seems really crazy, right? All of this modern like biotech stuff that we're confronted with.
I watched this documentary that I've mentioned probably like 25 times. So my audience is going to be like, dude, we already know this, but it's really important to what you're talking about. It's a movie called Finding Joe. It's one of my favorite movies. Everyone needs to watch this. It's so powerful because there's one of the speakers, Gay Hendricks being one of them. And he says, the Chinese symbol for crisis is danger and opportunity. So crisis, whether it's, AI, technology, the nanoparticles, plastics in our food, the subtle attacks of the matrix or the artificial realm that you speak of, danger and opportunity exists. So they're both there. So it still goes back to exactly what you said. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. I think we're always in crisis, really. There's always some type of crisis that we're being attacked with, weaponized, monetized by. So really at the core of it all, it does come down to choice, and the power of choice is always there for us. Yet, depending on our levels of trauma or how much work we're doing on our emotional health and our mental health, which is, by the way, a byproduct of cleaning the physical first, it becomes so paramount that this conversation is shared. So please, y'all, share this conversation. If you feel it's worthy, share this conversation, because somebody could hear this and their life could change. In a month, their life could totally shift if they start stacking the environment in their favor. And that's why we're doing this. So thank you for being here, man. What a great way to kick off the new studio.
Wow, thank you for having me.
Holy hell. Something that I mentioned earlier, when I was a kid, I always had this question that was burning. And I was like, why do these adults treat each other so poorly? How do I live my life well? How do I thrive in this world? What changed since, I think it was a year ago, we podcasted, or maybe it's the same, in the lens of which you see and live wellness? In other words, how do you live your life well? What does being well mean to you? What's your definition of wellness?
Yeah, being true to myself and remembering that not only do I always have a choice, I've always had a choice. And everything I've done, I've always chosen. And there's a power and a wisdom in that. And like even things that I did that harmed me, I chose to do them. And I always look at those. Those are the toughest ones to look at and be like, why did I do that? What's the wisdom? What's the lesson I was trying to teach myself? Like I shot myself in the eye with a BB gun when I was 6. Like, why did I do that? And so even that, I've had this really awakening awareness that I did that to let more light into my body through my eye, because my lens is torn, my iris is gone. And so I have been absorbing more light and had this surplus of light, for so long, that in a higher consciousness sense definitely led to the creation of SaunaSpace. So like just one example, but like, that's the programming is somebody did something to me. This was done to me. No, everything that you've done and haven't done was your choice. And that's not a thing of like shame. That's very empowering. Wow, I've always had a choice. I always have a choice. And especially when you get into a situation, you start to get irritated, or somebody's like, ugh, you get into a funk. You're like, wait a second, I can still choose to do whatever I want. I can enjoy this moment for what it is, and that's completely within my power as an unlimited conscious being.
As long as you remember to breathe. If you hold your breath during those high tension moments where you can exercise your power of choice, it's almost impossible, Brian, in my experience, if I'm holding my breath. I have to have some type of conscious breath awareness for me to, and then I can choose. It's this power of the pause, man. You're a great speaker. I love hanging out with you. You're a great friend. I just love SaunaSpace so much. I use it all the time. It's in the studio right now. Y'all go to joshtrent.com/SaunaSpace. Thank you for the discount. It's 10% off. This stuff is not cheap to make. It's all handmade. It's made in America, which is amazing. So I'm not flexing my American power here. I just do think it's cool that it's made in America and it's not shipped over in a container. So thank you for being here, man. Really appreciate you. And what else do we miss? I mean, we covered a lot of ground. Like I said, you had one foot in spirit, one foot in science then, like you do now. But what is something else that you feel like hasn't been shared, or maybe that you haven't even shared on another podcast?
Wow, Josh, like almost everything I said here was brand new. You're the first public forum in which I've spoken to it. I don't know. I think we hit a lot of really. There's a lot of things to chew on and a lot of food for thought.
Yeah.
ultimately, I'm continuing to explore this concept of being a multidimensional being and being connected to the stars and like what that means. Not as with any desire to like leave or to escape, but rather to enhance and activate my experience and like what we're doing here on Earth. We're meant to be here. We're not just meant to be like floating in some kind of like etheric level. There's a reason we have a component of our being that is in the physical. There's this powerful instrumentality that is totally divinely designed, that is just very unlimited in its potential. And I'm now exploring that also for personal growth and also in application with my extended consciousness SaunaSpace.
Well, thanks for being here. All right, y'all, be here.
Thank you for having me.
Share this podcast with somebody that you love, that you care about, until Brian and I see you on round number 3, when maybe he can talk about the vibrational aspect combined with the infrared and red light therapy, which would be super fascinating. We're both wishing you love and wellness. We'll talk with you soon.